So my name is Connor, here from Productboard. Today we're going to be providing a live overview of the system. To get started, we'll run through a couple of quick introductory slides. This way we can set the stage for what Productboard is and how it helps product managers achieve product excellence. So without any further ado, we're going to get right into it. And so here at Productboard, we're helping thousands of product managers and product teams get the right products to market faster. And so today, we want to share how we can help your team do the same. And so for some context, it's almost 2020 and product management has come a long way. We're lean, we're agile, we're empathetic, and customer driven. But when you talk to product managers these days, you hear the same concerns again and again. Questions like, are we building the right product? Or are we sending our teams off to work for weeks or months on features that will go underutilized? Or other questions like, how do we pursue a clear strategy? For many teams, they feel they're stuck in a cycle of reactivity, putting out fires, saving major deals, keeping key accounts from churning, or staying ahead of the competition. It's been a challenge. And then the ever-present question, how do we get buy-in or rally our team and organization around the roadmap? Many teams ask, how do we provide designers and developers the user and business context that they need to excel in their work? And how can we galvanize colleagues across the organization around the roadmap so that they know where the product is headed and why, and feel like they have a stake in the success of the product and of the business? And it's no surprise that product managers have these concerns. For one, we're losing insights. We have all these incoming product ideas, requests, feedback, streaming in from colleagues and customers from a variety of different places. And where are they captured? And what about user research? For most product teams, feature requests are scattered across tens of tools: email inboxes, Evernote, Slack, spreadsheet, support platforms, sales CRMs like Salesforce. And a lot of valuable market insights are lost or aren't easily accessible or actionable during prioritization and design. Next, strategy is often in chaos. The norm for today's product team is to be in a reactive mode. And we've become lost in the weeds, managing dev backlogs and engineering teams tools like Jira. In many cases, teams feel that they're unable to step back to set high-level strategy or clear objectives and consider how different features would be able to address key user needs. And third, teams are in disconnect. As we prioritize, whether it's in our heads, in spreadsheets, in dev backlogs, it can be a struggle to fully communicate the rationale for major decisions. All of the context from all the inputs and conversations went into these decisions can be difficult to articulate. And without this context, designers and developers are less equipped to build the right features in the right way. So earning buy-in from colleagues across organizations can be an uphill battle. And it's not our fault or the fault of product teams that these challenges exist. Until now, product managers have simply lacked the right system for capturing data and structuring the processes necessary to excel in your work. And colleagues across organizations have always had their dedicated systems, whether it's sales and Salesforce, support with Zendesk, marketing in Marketo, customer success in Gainsight, and engineering with Jira. So now it's time for product managers to have a home of their own too. But the question is often asked, and reasonably so, why not Jira? Or why not spreadsheets? And the issue with Jira is that it's ultimately a repository for all the delivery work that needs to get done. With Jira, you're always or often in the weeds. And sure, this can be good when you're actually sprint planning or tracking dev progress, but not when you're trying to plan high-level product objectives or get visibility around what you should build next. In short, good for project management, bad for prioritization. And while you may have used spreadsheets to prioritize feature ideas, many of us have, the downside is there's a lack of flexibility and a lack of structure for PM-specific workflows. For example, wouldn't it be great if you could seamlessly move between different visualizations of the same feature data as you moved from analyzing feedback to prioritizing feature ideas to planning releases to sharing your roadmap and preparing for launch? These are all critical for product managers, but hard to pull off in a spreadsheet. So what product managers need is a better way to align everyone on the right thing to build next. We need to bring vision and strategy and execution into one system owned by the product manager. We need a home for all things product. So we need a product management system, and that's Productboard. And here's what it helps your team do. It helps consolidate all of the incoming product ideas, requests, and feedback into one centralized repository of insights where you can identify trends around what users really need. You can also get a holistic view of all your feature ideas and prioritize what to work on next with the help of clear objectives, standardized criteria, and supporting data. You have a much clearer picture of what needs to be worked on. You can also share your roadmap with automatically visualized plans. It's always up to date. You have customizable views for different audiences. And you can validate your ideas by collecting votes and feedback to inform what you build and how you build it. And it's worth mentioning that you can integrate seamlessly with your tools for managing product delivery and for collecting feedback. So that's been our dream for the product management system, and that's why we designed Productboard to help you do it. So let's dive right into the product. So now we're looking at Productboard. More specifically, we're looking at the features board in Productboard. The features board in the system is the sacred place for the product team to capture feature ideas, to organize them, to prioritize and plan what to work on. Think of this as the primary interface in Productboard. And so again, in many cases, when teams have been using tools that are more optimized for engineering considerations or project planning considerations or execution considerations, systems like Jira, it hasn't always felt like a great place for the product team to organize high-level ideas or prioritize based on criteria that mattered to the product team or the broader objectives of the business. And so that's what we've done with the features board in Productboard. As you can see, here we've created an outline of our product. In this case, it's a messaging app called Slack. And here we've organized it at a high level, some of the main things that Slack helps customers do. So for example, Slack would help teammates communicate with one another. In other cases, people use Slack to connect with the broader community. And also, there's jobs that we would perform internally as well, like helping certain users administer their organizations, or things like capturing customer value. And so I mention each one of these to say that these are called components in Productboard, and they act as broad buckets to capture the feature ideas that we have. And again, we start here because with many teams that have been previously capturing feature ideas in systems like Jira or in Excel, very often it took the shape of a massive icebox. It was just a huge backlog of feature ideas that was always a flat list, could be hundreds or thousands of features long, and it was very untenable. And keep in mind, of course, that at any time, Productboard is flexible enough to be visualized as that flat list that some people are familiar with and want to visualize it as such. And that's the beauty of Productboard. It's all very easy to manipulate and maneuver as the product evolves. And so the first thing that we wanted to help teams do is just come up with a very clear outline that can just be manipulated and maneuvered. You can also see that we have other product examples in here. And so for many teams that have multiple product teams and have different product managers working on different area of the products, you can have a holistic view of all of your products and their hierarchies. Or if, for example, you just were one product manager, even in part of a broader team and only wanted to see your view, you could, and you would only be seeing one particular product and everything that you were working on within it. And so let's select a feature. And so for any feature, you can click it and understand more information about it. So here you might consider or include what problems you're addressing, what objectives you have from a business standpoint. You can include links and attachments, but the fan favorite is the insights piece. And so here is where you can see anyone who has ever said anything about this feature, like exactly what the customer said, why it's important to them. You can even drill back in here to go to the original conversation that this insight was sourced from. And so all of this context is on hand for product managers as they make critical prioritization decisions so that they can actually see what need it is that they're going to be addressing with the solution they're going to be building. And as valuable as it is for product managers to have this feedback on hand because they can spot trends in the feedback that they receive, it's also essential for designers and developers to have access to this information because often they can be one step removed from the front lines. And in a way, they require this context the most as being the individuals charged with developing this functionality. So now they can access this, and it's invaluable in helping them iterate faster and getting the right features to market faster. Many users of Productboard will present this information to their other teams so that they can follow up with design research in terms of problem interviews or solution interviews, testing early prototypes, things like that. But before we go any further, and we will return to the features board, we're often asked at this stage, how do these insights actually get connected to this feature in question? So let's take a step back and talk about the insights board. So now we're at the insights board. And it goes without saying that a critical part of helping product teams prioritize the right thing is making sure that you have all user inputs in one place so that they can actually be put to use when making prioritization decisions. And so the first section in Productboard is all about consolidating those inputs. And the way that we do that is we allow teams to integrate with a number of different common feedback sources, systems like Zendesk and Intercom, Slack, email. You can import notes full of user research that have been done in the past. And so you set up these integrations and automate the process of collecting feedback from a lot of different sources. And so if we wanted to take an example, you could come in here and say, here's a piece of feedback from James Page at Customer Envoy. And you can see that this particular piece of feedback came in from an intercom conversation, but had it come in from a different source, it would look very similar. And James has said, hey, we just made it through onboarding. We've realized this app doesn't offer video calling. This could be a real deal breaker. And so what we can do is we can isolate the most important aspect of this note, highlighting the actual feature request or the related user need. And you can see it already suggests video calls because this exists within our feature hierarchy. But if we wanted, we could add a brand new feature or create an entirely new user need right from this piece of feedback. But in this case, because it already exists, we can select it. And we can also indicate the importance we feel that it has to James. Keeping in mind that this is the product team assigning this importance and not James who's providing the feedback. It is up to the product team to determine this level of importance so that you can rank it or filter it out later. And in many cases, it's often a best practice to keep things, as a simple nice to have. So often the feedback we receive is as such. But in this case, James has said this could be a deal breaker. So this might be one of those red flag type feature requests, in which case we can mark it as critical. You can see here, there's the opportunity to apply tags or to link it to another feature. So there's a one-to-many concept as well. Before we go any further, it's important to note that every piece of feedback is here, available. You can retrieve it. It's all here in a single searchable repository. So you can use any number of different filtering conventions to drill in on particular pieces of feedback. Keeping in mind as well that you can have your own individual inbox or create a separate inbox or follow specific pieces of notes so that you can track the progress. So think of it from the perspective of a customer-facing colleague, wherein someone from sales or customer success submits an important request on behalf of one of their clients or prospective client. They can then follow that piece of feedback from the very idea that it was, all the way to its potential launch. And this just allows customer-facing colleagues to be kept in the loop and feel like they have a stake in the success of the product. And it also saves product teams time from always having to answer the many questions or have their colleagues coming by their desk to ask them the status of any given feature. Productboard empowers your customer-facing colleagues as well in this way. So now that we've talked about how to collect all insights from a variety of different sources, again, you can integrate with Slack. You can create an email alias and have your colleagues just funnel in emails that will go directly to your inbox or to the shared inbox. You can use the Chrome extension if while you're on a call, you just want to highlight a piece of text or simply type something in, tag it, and attribute it to a customer. You can submit that insight. And once it's all here, you can process it to move it out of the inbox to focus on the new notes that are coming in. Down below, you can say Ashley here as the owner of the note, but Winston here is following it. So this might be an individual that wants to track this insight from its creation to see how it progresses. Back to the features board. Before we go any further, it's important to note and add further context to the hierarchy. We've talked about the components, acting as folders or buckets to organize the themes or the high-level user needs. Within them, you have the features, and within the features, you can also see sub-features as well. So you can continue breaking these ideas down, these features, with more granularity. And if you want to think of it in agile language, you can see here that the features act as epics, sub-features acting as stories. And the same goes with the Jira integration, which we will show off in a moment. So we've talked about how we can get all of the qualitative inputs on hand, and that can be really valuable. But in many cases, product board customers want to roll it up into a single number and eyeball which features are being requested the most often. And that's where our user impact score comes in. So we'll go ahead and break this into that flat list that we're familiar with. And so we can apply a sort to this user impact score so that we can surface the ideas that are most commonly requested. And so this user impact score is aggregating the total number of requests that this feature has received by way of the linked insights, and it is weighting it by the importance of those requests. Keep in mind, you can also filter further. If, for example, we only want to see the most popularly requested features in the last 90 days or in the last year, or perhaps we just want to filter from insights that have been marked as critical or important, in case we just want to see those red flag or churn type features, or just those that we see have always been marked as critical and we know will be extremely valuable to our customers and prospective customers. So now that we've touched on how we can surface the interesting ideas that are most highly requested, we can explore some of the other factors that go into prioritization decisions as well. Example being strategic criteria that many product teams use to make decisions. So our most successful customers will typically go through the exercise of scoring features based on how they fit into key objectives or key areas of focus. And in other cases, they will also create business drivers that they'll roll up into a single prioritization score. And in case this is too small, we'll also zoom in here so that you have an easier visualization. And so let's filter views and go into a prioritization view. And don't be overwhelmed by all of the values or the columns. We'll go through each one in turn. And so speaking again to those business drivers that you can create and customize to align with the needs of the business, we have our drivers here, which roll up into a prioritization score. And so to explain drivers a bit more thoroughly, think of them as a rubric or attributes of any given feature that you're creating. Things like the ability to win or the financial impact or customer centricity. These are drivers or these are attributes that are always present or always being considered with any given feature. These never go away, so they're relatively open-ended. And then you can roll them up into a single score and apply custom weights to each driver that you create. Mentioning again that these are all customizable columns and values that you can create for yourself. You can roll them up out of 100% to consider how much each driver will impact the final score. And you can also divide by effort if you so choose. And what this allows many teams to do is once they've gone through the exercise of deciding how impactful each driver is, they can apply a sort to their prioritization score. To spot trends and patterns, see what's coming to the top. You can also see that you can apply simple t-shirt effort estimations. And this is just a custom field that you can create for yourself. So whether it's a t-shirt emoji or a different type of emoji, you have the option to create as many custom fields as you like. So now that we've talked about drivers and how they can roll up into a prioritization score, allowing teams the ability to define all of their drivers associate them with whatever product they like. So if you have different product teams, you can associate different prioritization scores and drivers with each product team. Let's talk about objectives. And so objectives are more used to define short-term, mid-term, and long-term goals, goals that have start dates and end dates, and are often measurable. Things like reduce operational costs by 3%. Teams within the product organization are increasingly using OKRs, and they want these visualized in a product management system. So they'll create an objective and define it, and then for any given feature, they can go through the process of determining how valuable each feature is based on what they understand about the objective. They can also input an effort estimation. This can be decided by the product team or using an integration with one of our developer tools like Jira. You can have your developers input the effort estimation, and this will sync up automatically. Finally, you can apply a priority from nice to have, must have, to should have. And so, once we've defined this objective and added features to this objective, in many cases, teams want to go through this exercise of understanding how valuable any given feature is based on what they understand about an objective. And so they'll limit the context within which they consider how important any given feature is based on the strategic initiatives of the company or of the product team. So you can zero in on a single objective and visualize the features on the vertical axis to see how valuable a given feature is based on this specific objective versus how much effort. And you can drag and drop to reposition based on what you think. Again, if you have developers inputting story point estimations in Jira, for example, this will sync across automatically on the horizontal axis. Let's go back to this view. So far, we've talked about how to collect insights, what that looks like for teams with a single product or multiple product. We've talked about prioritization and the different ways that you can prioritize within Productboard. You can also create different segments. If, for example, you want to create segments like SMB or startup or enterprise and determine how important any given feature is based on segments, whether it's a nice to have, should have, or must have. So if you wanted to only filter for these must have features across segments to see which features overlap based on the segments that you've defined for your customers. You can do the same for user personas or companies in the case of many enterprise clients who have high value or VIP customers or a customer advisory board that they want to understand how critical any given feature is based on the companies that they put into Productboard. You can also define competitors in Productboard. If as you create features or come up with ideas or user needs within the system, you want to determine how important is this feature, competitively speaking, in our effort to remain as competitive as possible with any of the competitors that we've listed within Productboard. Now, a question that we're often asked at this stage is, it's great, we can do the high level planning. We understand what the prioritization exercises look like. We know how to create our segments, but now, how can we add these to releases? What does it look like when it does come time to place this into a specific release? It's as simple as defining your releases using this column here. And you can have as many release groups as you like. And the reason teams use different release groups is they often want to have them with different granularity, or different product teams follow different release groups or different release nomenclature. And so you might have it as simple as now, next, and later, or they might be defined in quarters, or perhaps in as sprints. It's completely up to you and entirely customizable. And when it does come time to assign a feature to a release, it's as simple as selecting it. And you can also toggle the view if you just simply want to see each feature and how it exists within the releases. And the same goes if you want to switch to more a Kanban style view. Productboard is designed to be flexible enough to match the different approaches of product teams. So for example, you just wanted to see this more product lifecycle and less execution, something of a Kanban style, you can. And you can also use tasks at any time. If you want to define the items that are common across features that need to come together for a function to be launched. And so speaking to that, when it does come time for developers to begin working on something, we want to be able to push it to the proper development tool. And so with this in mind, let's talk about our developer integrations. And we'll use Jira as an example. And so when it does come time for our developers to begin working on something, we have our Jira integration here, which will fall under our task column. Here, you can define and create as many new tasks fields as you like. This is also where you'll set up your developer integrations. And it's as simple as pushing a feature to Jira. You'll select the project. So a question we're often asked at this stage is, we have different development teams, we have different Jira projects. Can we push to more than one project and track all of that in Productboard? The answer is yes. You can select your project and you can decide which issue type to push this over, as an epic, a story, a task, a subtask, even as a bug. Once you push it, it creates a two-way sync. Everything updates in real time, syncing automatically things like the name, the description, the status, the release or fix version, as well as story points. And so in many cases, product teams who have been working out of Jira are looking for a tool of their own to prioritize based on criteria that matters to them and create flexible product hierarchies wherein they can create different visualizations for different stakeholders. But they want to preserve the engineering workflows. And so the Jira integration is the perfect solution to that, so that they can easily come into Jira as needed. And the same goes with your developers and designers, who will have a link within Jira to come right back to Productboard. And so that two-way sync always exists in real time and can be used to create more collaboration between the product team and developers, providing context, valuable context on either side. Now, let's go on to the roadmap. And to start, we'll begin with this view. So the simplest way to visualize the roadmap is just by all of the features and the releases that it's been added to. Once again, all of these releases can be custom defined by whoever is using the system. So you can decide what the nomenclature is and define these columns. And what we can see here is each feature within the release that they've been added to. But there's also a lot of information here that you don't necessarily have to visualize, like the effort, for example. We can see the effort, or the owner, we can see the face, or the objective that it's been added to. All of this information is up to us, including sub-features, whether or not it's something we want to visualize. And all of these views are customizable so that you can create different views for different stakeholders or organizations. If, for example, we wanted to create a view so that the sales team can responsibly provide feedback to their prospective customers and customers about when a feature will be ready. And perhaps as we create this view for the sales team, there are a few things we're not quite ready to put on the roadmap and give them access to. New pricing tiers might be one we want to hold off on, at least until it's finalized. We can hide this, we'll save this view, and this is the view that we can ensure the sales team has access to. And you can do so with granular sharing settings where you can control which roles or which individuals can have access to each view. This is true of the roadmap, and this is true of what we were looking at in the features board. So to reiterate, Productboard we have customers that have a single product manager or a single product team consisting of 5. And then we have customers with hundreds of product managers using the system. And they can do so by creating views and adjusting the settings and the permissions and so on, in order to make sure that every user has the right level of access and control so that they can still perform their role and function without necessarily viewing sensitive data or perhaps getting into the system and making mistakes that another product team hopes they don't. And so to recap, you can create different views and control who can see them. We've looked at views that have been defined by the release, but you can also view it more Kanban style. Again, more product life cycle and less execution. All of these can be easily dragged and dropped from one to the other. You don't have to show sub-features. You can keep it very simple. And these can be views that you can save and create for yourself. Again, thinking back to the filtering options and settings. If, for example, you wanted to go and only filter for a specific Jira task, you could, and just zero in on a specific thing that your developers are working on. You could even filter by Jira status. Finally, we'll go to the portal. So before moving forward, we've talked about the insights board, the features, the roadmap, and now the portal. And so if the roadmap is that great way to share granular plans with folks within the organization, the portal is the digital bulletin board that you can expose to whatever community you prefer. So for example, these are custom facing images and descriptions that you can pull directly from your features board. You can upload your own image, create a public description, and allow your users to come in and either submit votes or add insights and offer an explanation as to why any given feature is important to them. And you can share with whatever community you like. Maybe you just want to create a portal specific to the company so that they can understand what the team is working on, when and why. Or perhaps you just have a customer that you want to send a private link or create a portal specific to them. Within Productboard, you can have as many portals as you like, so you can share different versions of different portals with whomever you choose. You can also embed it in a gated portion of your site or app and use SSO to let users seamlessly sign on without any friction. Common examples are teams to create customer advisory board portals for VIP clients who have pressing needs related to the product. You can create a portal and customize each one of these values. And so anyone from your customer advisory board could log in and see the progress that you're making on features that are very important to them and keep them abreast without having to notify them individually. Keep in mind, you can also compose an update. So if you want to update anyone who has ever requested the feature or made a comment, you can automate the process of closing the feedback loop and notifying them that a feature has been launched, released, or moved to a new stage. So that concludes the product demonstration portion of today's webinar. Now we can take a few questions live. See if there's anything that we want to answer in real time. And as questions come in, I'll be able to field them. While we wait for questions to come in, I'll note that again, we will be sharing a recorded version of this webinar, including a blog post. Yeah, so I see a question from Scott. It says, can you speak a bit more to the use of drivers versus objectives for prioritization? Certainly. So I'm going to go back to this prioritization view. And so it's a common ask in terms of what is the difference between drivers and objectives? How do we use these strategically? And so I'll say again that drivers should be considered more so as a rubric, attributes of your product or of features that are always present, or at the very least always open-ended, in that something like customer centricity or financial impact or strategic fit, these never necessarily go away as considerations for the feature. And so you don't necessarily ever close the book on them. But with objectives, these should have start dates and end dates. They should be measurable. And the idea, as exampled within our matrix, is for you to be able to zero in on a given strategic initiative, either of the product team or the company, to consider what the strategic impact of any given feature is based on that objective. And so if you do have certain milestones or objectives that you're attempting to achieve within a certain time period, it's great to define these in Productboard so that once this objective has been completed, you can look back within Productboard to measure your success. I have another question. Which integrations are most used, excluding Jira? For example, Zapier or other ones. Zapier is very commonly used. As you can imagine, it allows you to integrate with hundreds of other systems, and in many cases, teams like to use Zapier to connect it with other common feedback sources. For example, they want to integrate using a Google Doc where they created a form to solicit feedback that is contextual and actionable, and they have best practices defined with how their team should be submitting feedback. They might use Zapier to funnel that feedback in, to seamlessly put it into the insights board so they can make use. Other common examples of integrations are chat applications and support platforms, systems like Intercom and Zendesk, because you can create tags and other automatic conventions that allow you to funnel feedback in seamlessly so that it can come in pre-tagged, allowing you to easily filter and sort based on the category of feedback. And then it's very easy to then attribute it to an existing feature idea. One more that I'll mention is Slack. It's becoming increasingly popular for customers to create a Slack channel dedicated to feedback, because one example being you could pin the instructions for delivering the right type of feedback to Productboard. So every time someone from sales or success or support comes into that channel, they know exactly how to deliver feedback, what type of information it should include, and that way you can push it directly into Productboard very easily. And that push is done by the product manager. Would you recommend to use drivers or objectives to reflect impact on company KPI? My recommendation would be objectives. And so in many cases, teams will use objectives for that very thing. They'll come in and create objectives like reducing operational costs or driving revenue, but they'll have a hard number in mind or a specific outcome that they want to work towards. And they'll define those objectives so that they can track those results using Productboard. Let's see, I don't see any others. So why is a prioritization score can't be calculated from business objectives, only works for drivers? So at this time, the prioritization score is only a product of the drivers that it consists of. But you keep in mind that you can create multiple prioritization scores and define different drivers within them. At this time, the link between prioritization score and objectives doesn't exist, but it's a topic of discussion and something that we can always follow up with after the call. I'll mention one more time for those that missed, we will be following up after the fact with a recorded version of this. Also, before we end, I'll include a slide for anyone that's interested in signing up for a trial. You'll have the ability to get into Productboard yourself. It starts out as 15 days, and it's an interactive environment in that you can reach out at any time for assistance or to raise a hand and schedule a live demonstration or a personalized overview. We'll hang on for just a couple more minutes to see if questions come in, and otherwise we'll conclude today's session. So now, featured on the screen is the link if you want to sign up for a free trial. Oh, I see a question. 5 or 20 contributors mean in your pricing. So contributors are the customer-facing roles. Contributors, when given permission, can view anything that you give them permission to view, but contributors also have the ability to make comments and submit insights directly into the insights board. So depending on the plan that you sign up for, the question being 5 or 20 contributors, 5 with the individual plan, 20 with the team plan. This means that each plan comes with that number of free contributors. You can always raise a hand if you want to talk to someone from the team about pricing and packaging. I also see a question about customer stories. And so if you hold on for a moment, I think I'll speak at a high level because we have so many different product teams that leverage Productboard of all shapes and sizes. But one thing that I can say is that teams come to Productboard because they're looking for a more complete solution that allows them to consolidate a lot of the systems that are being used today. And so in many cases, we have teams that come, and I'm thinking of a specific customer who had previously been capturing feature requests in Slack channels, in Excel sheets. It was storing up in their email inbox. And they just weren't necessarily certain that what they were building was really actually addressing the real user needs. And in doing so, in using Productboard and the customer impact score, they were able to spot trends in the feedback that they were getting that was actually revealing that their customers had several distinct needs that they had previously thought was just a single feature idea. And so by bringing all of this feedback, but more importantly, the context behind the feedback, this customer was able to zero in not only on the trends, but on the specific patterns of the types of feedback they were receiving. Another example, like in the case of our customers at UiPath, who are one of the, if not the most fastest growing companies and startups in history. They've used Productboard in an effort to create a single source of truth for the entire organization. And so in many cases, product organizations feel like they're operating in a bit of a black box, so to speak. And in doing so, it's been difficult to justify the trade-offs that are being made each day. So by having a system that not only the product team can use, but that anyone within the organization can access and have the right context about what the product team is doing, but also the why. Not only does it rally the organization around the direction of the company, but it also solves problems that many product teams confess to having with regards to horse trading or having to adhere to the loudest voice in the room. When you're able to provide data-driven results and point to specifics within Productboard about why any given feature is being built or why a certain direction is being took, it allows for a lot more consensus within the entire community. Let's see. The question, are contributors considered those that are making public comments on the portal? So contributors can make comments on the portal, but you can also expose your portal to your entire end user, your entire customer community. You do not have to be a Productboard user in order to make comments or access the portal. You can expose it to the public. Okay, everyone. That concludes today's session. We will be following up with a blog reflecting all of the Q&A. So if questions were not answered today, we will make sure that they get answered. Keep in mind again that you can access this to sign up for a free trial at any time or hand raise, and one of us will reach out to offer a personalized demo. And if I did miss one of your questions, we'll be reviewing it directly after, and we can follow up with you personally. Thanks again, everyone. Here's to making products that matter.